Hello, everyone. Welcome to the July edition of the Product Ops HQ virtual meetup. I'm really glad that you are here with us today, and I'm really excited to host this today's session. For those who don't know me yet, I'm Anna, and I'm your community manager here at Product Ops HQ, and I'm joining in from Portugal. I will give you guys another minute or so to join us. And while we wait, please say hi in the chat and tell us where you're tuning in from. Joining me today is, aside from our marvelous panel, he's also Leah from Dragonboat. She will be hanging out in the chat, sharing some helpful links and answering any quick questions. And let's see where you guys are. So Chicago, Denver, South Africa, Portland, London, and I'm seeing some familiar names here in the chat, but I'm also seeing a lot of new people. So if this is your first time here, welcome. This is your go-to space to connect, swap stories and experience, and grow together. If you're not already in our Slack, we would love to invite you and to have you there. And so I will drop an invite link in the chat, and you can join us there. And here it goes. So we are now more than 1,016 folks there. So thank you all for making it such a great space to connect and share ideas. And a few housekeeping notes before we jump into the fun part. Today we are talking all things strategic planning, what's working, what's hard, and everything in between. And we will start with a panel discussion followed by a quick live Q&A at the end. So please feel free to chime in via chat, or if you have any questions, you can also drop it in the Q&A. And at the end, if you want to directly speak to our panel, you can raise your hand and we will promote you to talk directly with them. And finally, we wouldn't be here today without the support of our sponsor. Our sponsor, as you might already know, is Dragonboat. Dragonboat is a platform that for product leaders and product teams to make efficient and effective decisions so they can strategize and deliver at AI speed and scale. And this is all powered by portfolio intelligence. Trusted by thousands of teams at leading enterprises, Dragonboat is more than a platform. They are your partner in driving product operating excellence, and they are a proud supporter of this community of product ops pros. So you should definitely check it out, dragonboat.io, to learn more. I will drop that link in the chat as well. And I think that's it in terms of housekeeping notes. And we already have a lot of folks here. So let's get to the fun part. I'm really excited to introduce today's moderator, Amy Rohan. Amy is an experienced product leader with more than 10 years in roles like project manager, product owner, and product manager. And she's now part of Vista Product Ops team, supporting 700 people product org. Amy's experience also includes time at United Airlines and Discover Card, and she's passionate about helping product teams work better, enabling others to succeed, and creating a positive work culture. So Amy, thank you so much for joining us as moderator. I will hand it over to you to introduce the panel and kick things off.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anna. And it is great to virtually be here with all of you today. We're talking about a topic that's near and dear to many of our hearts, and it's strategic planning. So we're going to get into the good, the bad, the ugly, and get into everything. So before we jump into questions, let's hear from our amazing panelists who are going to be talking about their experiences. We'll just go down the line here, and if you could all introduce yourselves, talk a bit about your experience and where you're calling in from. Chris, can you kick us off?
Amazing. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Anna, as well for getting this organized. So, hey, folks, my name is Chris. I actually do recognize a lot of names in the chat, so it's lovely to see you all here. So with over 20 years in technology and product, I decided 2 years ago to start my own Product Ops consultancy business, where essentially I partner with senior cross-functional leaders to scale high-performing, outcome-driven organizations. That really means that I'm helping teams to build clarity, culture, and the capability needed to consistently deliver customer value and business impact, which is similar to what a lot of you folks are doing as well. I also speak at conferences internationally on product operating models, product leadership, organizational design, and I also care deeply about building strong, inclusive cultures. At the moment, I rolled off a client at the end of March that I'd had for 15 months. And at the moment, I'm currently writing a book on my approach to product operating models. The aim with that book is to act as a guide for both product leadership and product ops folks like yourself in terms of employing a product operating model to become more product thinking in your organizations. If you're interested in knowing more about that, then you can sign up to my newsletter, which is chriscompston.substack.com, where I often share lots of thoughts and frameworks around product ops and other product content. And in the future, I'll also be sending out some free book chapters as well to get your feedback. Finally, I guess if you're on the call today and close to Berlin or Lisbon or Vilnius, I'll be speaking at conferences there in September and October, and you can find details of that on my website. Thanks. I'll pass that over to Graham.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Anna. My name's Graham Reed. Again, loads and loads of names and faces on the call, so good to see everybody again, or see the names of everybody again, and hello to everybody that I've not met before. I am Head of Product Operations at Helios Group. In the UK, you will know us as MedExpress. In the US, you might know us as Zip Health or Rocket RX. We are currently Europe's largest supplier of weight loss medication. The big ones, Monjaro and everything else like that, that's just exploded after the last 2 years. So building up our product ops function from 0 to 1 for about the fourth or fifth time now, I think it is, here at Helios, as we're scaling rapidly. Outside of the day job, I, similar to Chris, got a newsletter with myself and Antonia Landy have just relaunched our venture called Product Ops Confidential, which is newsletter, our podcast, which has now been revamped as well, and everything, and loads of other exciting bits and pieces to come with that as well. So really looking forward to speaking today. Really quite pertinent for me because we are just in the middle of completely revamping the way that we do strategic planning at Helios. So I've absolutely got some good, some bad, and some very ugly things to talk about as well. And I will hand over to Shabnam.
Thanks, Graham. Hi, everyone. I'm Shabnam. I'm currently heading up product operations at Yoco. We are fintech. We're based in Cape Town, South Africa. We've got offices in the Netherlands as well. And we focus on small business payments and commerce. Right now, I lead a small central product ops team. We support product design, research, a little bit of engineering, and go-to-market enablement. I've been involved in all things product for about 20 years. So I love building products, product teams, product orgs, and I've been quite fortunate to be a part of a few organizations that have gone through a lot of scale. And the whole concept of getting this org to run smoothly is just fascinating. And as I work through these organizations, every time something works at 50 people, and then it breaks at 100, and then it works at 100, and then it breaks at 200. So just this process of setting teams up and enabling them and letting things get out of the way so they can do their best work is a fascinating, constantly learning journey for me. Yeah, and I'm really excited for this conversation today. So thanks so much for the opportunity.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the intros. Let's jump right in. So we said we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's start on a positive note, and then we'll get into the rest. So I'd love to hear about what has been working well in your organizations when it comes to strategic planning. So something that's working well currently, or something you've seen work well in the past. Let's start with the highlights. And Shabnam, do you mind kicking us off on this topic?
Sure. Yeah, so one of the things that's working well right now is that we don't plan everything. I think we've done enough iterations that we've gotten the level of planning and the breadth and depth of planning right. We use an adapted version of the NCT framework, so we've simplified it, and across our 15 teams right now, we plan one clear goal and 3 commitments. Acknowledge that teams do more than that, but we don't really fuss about everything else. There's a space to talk about it and to, surface it so it's not hidden. But we really, really focus most of our conversations now on our top 3 goals. That forces prioritization. It's made execution clearer, and it's definitely been the one change that we've made that it's working well for us for a couple of quarters now.
And I want to follow up on that. So in terms of getting to those top 3 goals, is that a tricky process in terms of getting everyone to agree and focus on what those top things should be?
Yeah, it definitely is. Look, I think we started this journey late last year and we went quite extreme. We went 1. Everyone does 1. And then people started creeping in 2 or 3. We did a quarter where we didn't put any artificial ceiling on this. We just went focus on your most important things. Teams struggled without that forcing function of this, and it is an arbitrary number, right? We just pick 3. Without that, teams struggled, and every little thing was important. What I found the biggest change was just to create a space to surface the other stuff. Because how teams felt like, but we're doing so many other things. We don't just want to talk about these 2 or 3 because we're doing all this other stuff in the background. Creating a space for them to surface that helped, so it's not invisible, but making sure that we all agree on like what are those 3 non-negotiables. So if one of those non-negotiables is being blocked or slowing down, probably not because you're slacking, but because one of those other things are taking up too much time, that's a point in which we can obviously throughout the quarter escalate and make changes. So it was a bit to get used to, but the teams are I think they're comfortable. They also enjoy the clarity that comes with my 3 big non-negotiables.
Yeah, Chris, what do you think?
I'm fascinated by this because it's not a common story. And I was really interested with the kind of first sentence you said, which was, we don't plan everything. So I'm wondering what the everything is. Like where's everything else that isn't being planned? Those 3 goals, or 1 to 3 goals that you're trying to do. I think I didn't quite catch it. Maybe it's every quarter or something. Like where's everything else going? And is it low enough level that the teams can just pick things up, or is it pushed into planning for the next round?
No, it's lower level. So we don't plan 100% of a team's capacity at the strategic level or the product leadership level. You trust that the team knows to balance. They've got the 3 big rocks. The operators cross-functional product teams, BAU is going to slip in, little pieces are going to slip in. They need support. They need to support other teams on their goals. There's enough fat buffer built in that the teams can slip those in. Those don't need to be in our setup managed at our leadership level.
Thank you for sharing that. I suppose that I'm saying it's not very common because what I've seen happen a lot, and particularly with big rocks, are that there are big rocks to achieve as well as everything else needing to be achieved. And everything else still has to be planned, which causes the team obviously quite a lot of stress. I suppose back to the original question from Amy, and it sounds like maybe you're doing this as well, Shabnam, actually. It's just like early engagement with business stakeholders so that they not only can input their opportunities, ideas for product development. Obviously, it's great for building trust in general, but they're also able to understand the planning process a little better so that they know that everything else that's not being planned isn't not being done. It just doesn't particularly feature in the strategic planning, which I guess is where you kind of start building those relationships with stakeholders so you can get them more involved in that.
Yeah, and two things that really resonated with me as you were both talking is so one, in terms of capturing everything, a phrase that we've been saying recently in my team is when everything is important, nothing is important. Right. And so it's so easy to fall into that trap of like, okay, we need to track status on every single little thing. But especially when you're part of a really large organization, it all starts to lose meaning and no one has the hours in the day. And it starts to erode at that focus. So it's one thing. And then the other element of this that maybe we'll get into later is I'm curious of how the maturity of a product organization affects how you approach your planning, right? And so, Shabnam, when you're talking about, we're not asking the teams to plan out every single little thing that they're doing. We're asking them to focus during strategic planning on the big rocks. Does that work well if you're maybe working with less mature product teams who like don't often think about the BAU piece or how it all fits together? So I wanted to raise those and give you a chance to chime in if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think the journey to get to those top three is just different. So that was one of the challenges. I think it'll always be a challenge in planning. Every team isn't at the same maturity level. So the amount of support and hand-holding you give through that process is different. So we would have a very mature senior team with a strong product lead immediately from the get-go going, understand the strategy, these are my top three. Let's go. And then there would be teams who are coming with lists of features and struggling to manage stakeholders. It's all about walking them through that process and helping, like coaching them so that they can get to that point. I did see actually, because I checked, because when you reached out about this planning, I think we had just finished planning, and you feel so good. The templates are completed, everything is shiny. I'm like, yes, like it was amazing. So I felt really amped that we had a great planning cycle. We are now 1 month in, and I'm starting to see the greens turning to orange. And I saw one team has already snuck in a fourth commitment. So it's tough. It's tough for some teams too, but we have to keep at it.
Yeah. And Graham, I want to hear from you on this too, but related to what's going well, do you have any examples of like where you've made simple tweaks that had a big impact to help make planning effective?
Yeah, it's really interesting. What everybody has said so far. The big rocks thing has been a thing. I think I said it about 3 years ago at one company, and it became a meme overnight in itself at this company. So it was really, really good. But it's absolutely right. We've so one thing that I've done very recently is we are kind of just rethinking how we do our kind of quarterly planning is actually trying to visualize this in a very timeline fashion to help the teams understand what do they need and when and at what level of maturity or completeness. Because when we go through planning, we don't get to, whenever we start planning, we don't go, right, I'm going to investigate this initiative and I'm going to absolutely research it to death. And then that one's complete. And then I'm going to go on to the next one. We go, right, actually, here are 3, 4, 5, 6 ideas that I've got at this stage. Let's haggle them out. And actually, we're doing this. We're now tasking the team, each of our squads, to start with 6 initiatives for the next quarter. And then we're having a checkpoint, and our checkpoint is actually next week, whereby each team will kind of look at these and kind of go, this is what we're thinking. It's very high level. Don't even know if this is necessarily a good idea. We've not checked this so far with kind of cross-functional alignment. This is just what we're thinking. Perfect. It's very light. We've not spent huge amounts of time going into the details. And then we go, okay, right, next month we're going to do another checkpoint and we're going to whittle this down to 4. And then we're eventually going to get it down to 2. And each checkpoint, we have more information, we have more level of detail about this, whereby we get down to our 2. Yeah, that's when we start having our PRDs. That's when we've done our cross-functional work. This is where we've started to kind of really look at the forecast success measures and things like this for each of these. We've actually started to plan these maybe into sprints. And what we've done with this as well is we've put this on a visual timeline to kind of say, right, this is what you need here, and this is what you need here, and this is what you need here. And as top of that, who is involved at key meetings to create key events at what point? Because again, who needs to be involved when and where and at what level of detail means that we're not kind of getting everybody into a room, spending huge amounts of time, resource, energy, money in doing things where actually we kind of go, well, no, we just need this little element here and these people are needed. And then this little element here is there and then those people are needed. So we're keeping it very lean, very efficient. And this kind of very visual piece so far seems to kind of be ticking a lot of boxes with my sets of squads. They've it's kind of clicked a lot of things in space where I've previously just been talking about it and people are going, yeah, it kind of makes sense, but then me very personally, what do I need to do and when?
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like really being clear on the fidelity of information that's presented at each stage so that people know when this is very high level versus, okay, now we're really getting into it, our confidence level's getting higher. Everyone being on the same page with that has been super helpful. Chris, I saw your hand go up. Did you want to add something here?
Yeah, I always want to add stuff, I think. I'll just stop raising the hand now. I find it interesting that there's some comments in the chat saying that sounds somewhat waterfallish or definitely not agile. I have to say, given that I think I've worked in agile the whole time I've been in tech, there's very, very few organizations that are doing agile software development. Like, just to be really clear, like it might sound like it, might look like it, but it's not always the case. I think we do have to be careful though when, and I've done this exact same thing, when we're visualizing planning, that it doesn't end up looking like squares on a timeline so that people think that actually, okay, there's steps I have to go through and it is very much gated. But that comes with the nuance, that comes with the context, that comes with sharing and presenting the concepts of planning. I would add on top of this to your question as well, Amy, one of the things that has worked quite well with me to get people on board with different types of planning is something I call refresh rate, and being really clear to people how often we measure things, how often those things are refreshed, and how long we look to the future for those things. OKRs are always a really good example. Every organization does do them slightly differently, some better than others. In one client that I worked with, we made it really clear that our OKRs, they were monitored and measured every single month, but we only reviewed them every quarter. So that's every 3 months, right? So we only ever reviewed them every quarter, but we viewed them as a 6 to 12 month thing. So it's, again, just helping with like what I call like ultimate clarity, just being everyone's on the same page, that they understand when things are going to be happening, to what stage, how we're going to refresh them. Similar with things like product, let's just say product vision. Okay, might be looking at 3 to 5 years, but every year we should be making sure we're on track. And then who are involved in those conversations? Unfortunately, you do tend to find that people that come into the industry that have less experience expect that they're going to be involved in some of these higher level concepts, like maybe product vision, and it's just often not the case. But they are involved in OKRs, and that's how they link to strategy, and that's how they should be viewing their planning as well. So that's something that I've used that's been relatively useful.
Ultimate clarity. I like that phrase. Shabnam, what do you have to add?
Yeah, it was just to your point around the, the fidelity and that and being agile. I think it depends also on the organization or the team psychological safety, right? Like how I find that when we introduced the word commitment, it was quite a scary word. And then planning, and it's we use the word on purpose at the time because we were trying to change some of the behaviors. And teams wanted to do lots and lots and lots of planning to get to this level of fidelity and comfort that they could commit to it. We have worked through this and iterated over the months and months where teams understand now what the word commitment means and the fidelity of the commitments at the right level, where we're not going, a commitment is not build this product with these 5 feature sets by 17th of June. That's not it, right? It's going to be around stage of product market fit. It's going to be number of users you'd like on it to give an indication of maturity, things like that. There was another company that I worked at where this was quite a struggle. They needed to plan. I think someone in the chat said like 12 months And this organization needed to do the same. They always needed to have a 6 to 12 month roning. And the CTO was really uncomfortable because they needed to give these commitments. What we introduced there, I think it came from Marty Kagan. He had this idea of this on a roadmap, you put the term high conviction on. And he said you can put a long-term roadmap, but you only tag some things with high conviction. And I think it was to do with investors and board maybe. And you kind of coach those people that unless you see high conviction, you need to understand that it's like it's a guess. So we introduced the tags of low conviction, medium conviction, and high conviction onto every single roadmap item, which was the disclaimer that the teams could give. And they'd say, you know what, we only spent half a day on this and we have a low conviction commitment. Low conviction means we could be off by a couple of months. If you need for us for any reason to get this down to like in a few weeks, we can get it to medium conviction, but then we're going to spend another week planning. Let's weigh up the opportunity cost. So it gave quite a lot of objectivity and some terminology that the product and engineering could use with their stakeholders to get to a level of comfort with that planning. And in that scenario, different teams and landed in different places with the level of comfort they wanted. But it was just quite a nice framing for me when you think about planning in your own environment.
Yeah, that example hit on so many topics that I hope we have time to get into. Like one of them is just what's the shared terminology and language that you're using for planning, and that pervasive throughout the company so that not just the product teams understand it, but the stakeholders are on the same page too. And how some of those terms can carry an element of sensitivity to them. So I smiled when you said the word commitment because I've experienced that as well, where it can trigger a little bit of angst or anxiety with teams of like, okay, you're asking me to commit to delivering X feature on X date, and we're not a feature factory, but now it feels like you are. But something that I think is really important on the flip side to consider is, while we're not asking people to commit to like a certain feature by a certain date, there does have to be some type of commitment and sense of accountability for we are pursuing these outcomes and we, need to deliver this type of outcome within this time frame. So it's like that tricky balance there, but it can get a little messy. Graham, what do you think?
Yeah, and it kind of ties into kind of just a few of the comments about whether this is agile or not, or the piece that I said. If anyone's followed me for a little while, you know how I feel about actually being a purist agile. In fact, I'm the complete opposite to that myself. And one of the things with this is how do we align with what the business wants and how the business operates? So here's where I am. We operate on quarterly planning across the business. So actually, if we as a division wanted to kind of go, no, we're going to literally be purist agile, and we're going to literally just play a sprint ahead, and we're going to do this, and we're going to be, that doesn't fit in with the business. That's not practical. That's not sensible to do. And I think sometimes in products we've kind of found ourselves falling into the trap of going, hey, actually, do you know what? We can push agile onto the wider business. In fact, when agile was kind of really gone and up and coming, that was the thing that so many people were trying to do, is to say, actually, you change your business to be agile. No, that absolutely died a death very, very quickly. So the thing here is and Shabnam, you absolutely hit on this, is what we're talking about here is what level of fidelity do we get into at what point? The actual execution of things is not really planned out. I mean, actually, we kind of do plan out, and we shouldn't probably, but actually planning out what we want to achieve in a period of time and not when we're going to do things down to the day, gives us that freedom to change things around and to be reactive to what the business wants to do. And what's very interesting is a year ago, we were in a very different place. We were doing very much the same things, but the business was being incredibly reactive because we didn't have that planning in place. The leadership didn't have sight of, at that highest level, what was planned to happen in that next quarter. And so actually, there was even much more reactive. We were incredibly inefficient because projects were being picked up, product projects were being dropped left, right, and centre, because one side of the business fundamentally didn't know what the other side was working on, what was planned to happen. So it's We absolutely, and again, Shannon, I think you said this as well. You have to be what your business wants to be. You can't force any of this sort of stuff onto a business because a book said so or anything else like that. And if you do, you absolutely need that buy-in from top down, bottom up, and every side in between.
Yeah, so many factors that play into this. Planning is one of those things that sounds deceptively simple. So we've already started to get into some of the challenges with strategic planning, but I want to dig in more to some examples from all of your experience. Where are you all still seeing the most friction within planning? Like, what are the biggest challenges you're trying to tackle right now? Chris, I'm going to kick it to you first.
Actually, yeah, cool. I mean, leading on actually from something that Graham was touching upon there as well, because I've always seen the biggest challenge being like the disconnect between the product managers, the teams, and then their senior business stakeholders. Not just in terms of how they're doing planning or the types of work that they might think is important, but like the expectations always seem to be quite misaligned. I've always tried in my role as product ops. I've always taken a product ops approach of being the enabler, the internal consultant. That's always how I've tried to approach it. And connecting teams to finance teams, connecting teams to senior business stakeholders so they can actually talk about how they're doing things and what they're choosing to do. And the reason I say that is there was an example I have from when I worked at Bumble and I was leading product operations at Bumble, the online dating product. And what the game of telephone, as we call it, between the finance teams and the product teams caused product teams to think that they had to commit, to use Shabnam's words there, commit to things every single sprint, every single week, every single quarter, and to financial targets. The disconnect between those two teams was that the finance teams weren't actually looking for that. They just needed to see a 6 to 12-month overview of roundabouts the kind of revenue that they might be expecting so that they can plan capacity and they can plan budgets around it. And it was simply just sitting teams down and having them speak to each other that was causing the biggest friction because they saw each other in different departments, in different rooms, and just didn't have that connection. And I think a lot of the time product ops work isn't massively challenging when all it takes is to just remove some of those blockers. And I think if we hire people into product ops that are really good at relationship building, influencing, yes, critical thinking and change management also help, but removing some of those blockers, I think, is where I've seen the friction being destroyed in a way.
Yeah, that can go downhill quickly. Graham, did you have anything you wanted to add on this topic?
Yeah, I absolutely aligns to what Chris has just said, and yeah, you know, it kind of goes back to a little bit what I was saying earlier as well, which is, you know, businesses have to, and I mean, we do this to the nth degree. We have to know what we're planning to do. We do huge amounts of financial planning on what we're going to deliver kind of the next 6 to 12 months. You know, our product managers are talking to FP&A to kind of go, this is what we're thinking, and then they're putting whole models together to kind of go, well, you know, this is the projected growth. You know, and if you're not doing that planning and you've not got at least an element of understanding, you know, a bit of research, you know, an idea of what this is going to do and what it's going to look like and what problems it's going to solve, how do you plan that? And then fundamentally, how do you then sit down and go, is this one worth doing or is this one worth doing? Which is going to give us the greatest returns? What are the connections? What are the different models that tell us X, Y, and Z? Now, yes, it's prediction, it's models and things like that. Yes, of course it is. But that's fundamental big business. In fact, that's fundamental any business. And so that's incredibly important. And I think that it's then also important for product teams to understand the value of these things that they are proposing to do as part of planning. You know, yeah, I mean, it can be as simple as ICE scores, but that impact is incredibly important to understand. Well, what is this going to give us? What's the benefit to us as a business for doing this? Not just it will make customers happy, or it answers these, you know, these feature requests, or you know, or it does this integration. Okay, but businesses run on money, so tell us the money, show us the money. What is this going to look like?
Yeah, so much of these planning discussions come down to trade-offs, right? And so one is the team have the right data and information available to articulate that trade-off? Do we have the right people at the table to talk about those trade-offs, and how are we connecting them together? It gets complex really, really quickly. Chris, go ahead.
Sorry, I raised my hand and then I couldn't find my mute button. I think it's interesting because I think if we get really down to the foundations of what planning is all about, particularly strategic planning, it's like storytelling, right? You have to find a narrative, and that narrative is what influences business stakeholders to agree with you and then to finance and fund your teams. And I think if we can get to a place, or product managers, product leaders can get to a place where that narrative includes their understanding of customer value, where they're going to have business impact, what a level of technical effort, including discovery, research, design, engineering, QA, etc. And then what that time to value and impact is. Like, if you can hit all those nails on the head and showcase that to business stakeholders, you're going to be in a really strong place. And I think on top of that, I would add, when it comes to business impact, there's like 5 things that business leaders care about, right? It's making money, saving money, getting new users, re-engaging existing users, or in some cases, shareholder investor value. They're the only 5 things that business leaders care about. If your narrative and your story includes those words and that language, you're more likely to get those things planned. I would just finish, and I saw Shabnam, you had your hand up as well, so I'll pass to you next. I would just finish on, we're talking here in a way that feels like it's the product ops position to do this, and it's not. This is product management and product leadership. All we're here to do is to put in some of those operational standards to help them to be more efficient and effective with planning, and to guide them in some way, because I mean, the people, at least on this panel, are very experienced in product and tech in general, right? Not just in product ops. So we can guide and coach people through it, but it is essentially down to the product managers and their product leadership to do this work. Shabnam, I'll pass over to you.
Thanks. I put my hand down because sometimes it's like it's pressure when you see the hand all the time, and you were saying some solid stuff. So I agree with you around the storytelling, the narrative. Absolutely, you need to be speaking to those points that matter to those stakeholders. I do think no matter how good the story is, if you're going away for a week of planning and you come out and you have a big presentation, you still need to go into this sales pitch mode. So there is value in trying to bring more and more of those stakeholders into your process. Even though it's a bit disruptive, like we're definitely not where we need to be, but we've started, for example, pulling strategic finance into planning. So because it's a 1-week structured process, it makes it easier where you go, okay, you've got data people there to help you. You've got strategic finance who can help you do quick back of the envelope calculations because they're busy doing their own planning. In any case, you can have support there or operations, so you can bounce off ideas. You can have sales there to see if you're completely off the mark in terms of the big priorities. Finding ways, and this would look different, I think, per team, per company, per product, it's going to look different. But to find a way to extend that cross-functional team in planning to be bigger, to include more and more of your stakeholders so that they're with you in that process. So at the end of the day or the end of the week, when you do that storytelling narrative, like they've already heard it, they are nodding, they can jump in and add to the narrative instead of you presenting it to them. But it is a shift and it's a journey to get there. But yeah, I think that would be quite powerful.
The time is flying by here, and I feel like we need another 4 hours to adequately cover this. One thing I want to ask you all is, so Chris, you brought up a great point of how product ops isn't technically responsible for doing the actual planning. We're more accountable for the design of the planning process and making sure that we're enabling an effective planning cycle. I'm curious, in all of your experiences, as you've gone through probably iterations of what this looks like at your company and like, let's try this quarter and like, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's try something else. Is there anything that looked good on paper that you were like so excited about and then, you know, the rubber hit the road and it did not go well? Shabnam, I think you might have an example to share here.
Yeah, I think my it's probably not a profound realization. Most of you would have told me before the time, but like the clean, neat 1 week planning, no matter how well you plan, it just never goes that way. I think when you get, if you, because we are so intentional about it, you're getting people together, finally you have all these innovative problem solvers focusing on the problem at hand, being fully present, curveballs are going to come. And they're good curveballs. They're new innovative ideas, interesting like connections that spark other things, which would then result in this neat little 1 week planning being derailed. There's a fair amount of pre-planning and post-planning happening in every planning cycle. So that, I think that for me, I think is like, it looks fantastic on paper to do a 6-month plan and go in week 2 of this month, we are going to plan for that quarter. The reality is that it's product development, like it's all the time, right? It's all the time planning, discovering, learning, iterating.
Yeah, that's a great example of until you kind of go through it and experience it, and then you realize, oh, that's not going to quite work as we anticipated. I would also be remiss if I didn't ask a question about AI in this session. And so I would love to hear how is AI influencing how your organizations do planning? Is there anything fun that you're experimenting with at the moment that has had a positive impact? Chris, can I pass this one to you?
You can. My answer is no, I'm not doing anything. I'm kind of, I'm always I'm still in two minds about like how to integrate AI into the things that just a product organization does in general, not specific to product operations. Not that I'm skeptical about it. I use AI in like at least generative AI in the kind of work that I'm doing as well. But I still keep coming back to, and I can see there's a question on this in the chat as well about using AI to do this work. I think while I can't sit here and say, here's the 5 prompts that I use, or here's the best new tool to do it, what I would always ask people, and I still talk to this with my clients as well, is to take a little bit of a step back and to understand how and where AI is going to help to do that, specifically around, can we be more efficient and effective in our decision making? So will the AI tool increase our quality of decision making? And if the answer is yes, then you employ it. And I know actually, I think Graham actually, were you working with Ross on an AI tool? He showed me it a few weeks ago, and it was about taking all different data points of research from around the organization, all the different tools they use for data and insights, and bringing it into a neat picture. And that, you know, that can help with planning. Like, how can it not? Like a really well formatted dashboard of insights that AI has been able to go and grab for you, that saves you time, it's going to make you more efficient. The question I will have here is, does it make us more effective when it comes to planning the work that we want to do? Does that AI tool help us to make those decisions in an evidence-based way? I think there'll be a bunch of lesser experienced product managers who will pick that up and maybe even blindly say, you know what, we're just going to follow this research and we'll just build the things that this is telling us, because actually we don't know any better right now. Okay, and that's just an experience thing. And there'll be a bunch of more experienced product managers that might even spend a day questioning the dashboards that the AI has built, just like they would question their own dashboards, and it's still going to take them time to make those decisions. So I would just always kind of ask, like, let's get back to like first principles. Why should AI be helping us? Will it help us be more efficient and more effective? And if it does, then you go ahead and use it.
Love that. Graham, what do you think?
Yeah, actually, in the last sort of 2 or 3 weeks specifically, kind of this has really come to the head, and I'm probably one of the biggest Luddites on AI there ever has ever been. I'm so behind the times personally on it, but we've been we've been looking at it very, very closely, and absolutely 100% agree with what Chris has just said there is, does it actually help you? So we were experimenting with a tool that we bought in as a, it's a very early stage tool. It on paper seemed really good. It hasn't quite worked for us in terms of, so, very briefly, it was going to read through all of our Jira tickets, get an understanding from that about how we write our tickets, things like that. We fed it a bunch of information about, the company and the market and things like that. And the idea was, at the very least, output us some tickets when we give it a kind of, this is what we want to build. And it did, but actually in reviewing it, there was two things we found. Firstly, they weren't that good, the tickets. Now, the company's very, very small, very early stage, so, they're still learning on this as well. But what this crystallized for us as well was, what do we actually need out of this? So we could, what would be a good output? It can write us accurate tickets for us. Okay, yeah, great, a time saver. And everything I'm doing with AI at the moment, I'm focusing on, can it save me 80% of the time? If I still need 20% of the time to top, tail, look at it, review it, maybe that ticket didn't, is complete rubbish. All right, but it's done 8 of them for me. All right, still 80%. So actually, that's what I'm aiming for at the moment. I'm not looking at AI to kind of go, can you make those decisions for me? Can you write these things blindly and I don't know what it should look like? And I'm going to trust you on that. What I'm looking for it to do is to say, can you just basically do some good automation for me and save me a bunch of time? And as a consequence of seeing all of this, we're going back to the drawing board a little bit and going, what we actually need here is not a tool. We need good prompts and we need good context. That's the biggest thing that I've found over the last few weeks and months is context is actually everything. The prompts are important, but it needs to understand who you are as a business, what you do, what sector you're in, what's your tech stack look like, how do you approach technology, blah 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 blah. And that's what we're working on right now, is to kind of go, let's write some great context so it knows enough about our business and how we work as much as we all do, and then see what it can provide for us.
Absolutely. There's a level of investment there to get the return we want, right? So you have to train the brain. It has to know the context. That's so important. Shabnam,
Just Amy, just very quickly, Ross
Yeah.
said a really great phrase when he was talking to me about AI. AI is like fire. It can either burn you or cook for you. And I was like, that's really sums up my thoughts on that as well.
I will be quick, Amy. I just want to give 2 or 3 practical examples because I see the message we need to wrap up. So, Graham, I feel so old that I'm taking so long to get onto all these. Like, I use GPT as my therapist, but besides that, or maybe but I'm not doing, anyway, I'm not keeping this short. Organically, it was very interesting to watch how people were using AI without us saying what they need to do throughout this planning process. So the one key theme that came out for me a lot is that it's enabled us to live in the mess, right? Because we could spend a lot more time pre-planning. As a product leadership team, we really got stuck into the strategy. We just got stuck in. We spoke about the stuff with our documents were messy. We were doing FAQs. We were looking at graphs, data points. We were just messy and deep in our thinking and not focused at all on how we're going to package it. And then we could, the day before, drop something in and go, okay, can we use one of these tools to package it into a narrative or into a slide deck? So it didn't replace our thinking, but it gave us the room and the space to do deep thinking. I saw the same thing happening in planning week, where even though there was a template that I put out and the teams weren't stuck on the template. They could do and think in whichever way they wanted to, and then right in the last half an hour, they could go and they could spit it in the template, right? Use a tool. So that room to think, that was like huge. I really believe that helped the quality of our planning, because teams spend way less time on that work around the work, and they could spend time really getting stuck into it. That was the one thing. The second one that I thought was very cool was our head of product took the first slice of all of the OKRs that got set and just pushed it through a tool to go, tell me if everything is smart. Like, just let me know. And because we have loads of teams and loads of OKRs, so she had a set of 50 or 60, and she could get a quick first slice, like red, yellow, green. These are the teams you need to focus on more because I haven't put in measurable goals. That was a really cool practical example. And then the last one was similar to the packaging. Right at the end of the cycle, I wasn't stressed about needing to keep a day to package and repackage and consolidate and share the stories to the business. I could spend a lot of time with the teams on the actual planning, and then in the end go, okay, whatever tool I use, create a Slack post for me, create a slide deck, create this narratives for this audience, and use. So those were very small ways, but practical ways where I really believed it helped us spend more time in the depth of planning rather than the ceremonies around it.
Those are really great practical examples that I'm sure apply to a lot of the folks on this call. So thank you for sharing those. Being mindful of time here, I do want to see, Anna, what do we have in terms of live Q&A? Is there anything we need to address at this point, or folks that want to go ahead and raise their hand and ask something?
Yeah, so thank you guys first for this lovely conversation. So we have a few questions in the Q&A. I think Sarah is asking, how do you scope these goals going in? So this came up right at the beginning of the conversation. I'm not sure if Sarah is still here. Okay, Sarah is here. I'm going to allow you to talk, Sarah. Welcome.
So my question is, as far as the 3 major goals, I guess, that you focus on and everything else just sort of comes with, so to speak, how do you scope those goals? Because I've seen goals that are like improve customer retention. Okay, does that mean we do 1,000 customer requests that we deliver and we don't do anything else? Or is it like, how do you frame that without digging like really deeply into it so that there's meaningful scope and it's not just a goal that almost anything you want to fit into that goal can fit?
Yeah, the goal does need to be objectively measurable. It does. So something like that wouldn't work. Like, it's that usual SMART framework where you go, okay, it's SMART, it's measurable, it's achievable. So we apply some degree of that. I did mention we used an adaptation of Ravi Mehta's NCT, which has worked very well for us, where you go, like, the main ones we use, we either put a commitment down that is a deliverable for a product that's at that early stage, where you go, you need to get this piece of work out, or we put down a number that you can move. But it would never be as high level a theme as you mentioned. So in your example, you'd go do that by X% or with this amount and try and quantify it.
Thank you.
I also think, just to chime in here, it's the role of the product leaders to help their teams translate some of those super high level goals into what that means for their team, right? And so if you do have a super high level company goal of like improve acquisition by this much, the product leads need to be talking together to then say, all right, well, in the context of the customer business problems we need to solve to achieve that, here's how that breaks down. And this team should focus on this piece of the problem space. This team should take this. Then you can start figuring out dependencies. So it kind of depends on like how the altitude of goals that your company has too. But I really think it's the role of the product leaders to help translate that messy middle as well.
Yeah, but they often need coaching as well, right? So, I guess different organizations are different, but if I said, we're focused on 3 goals, we would literally have 3 goals of, improve retention, improve sales, and improve, I don't know, pick a third one, user experience. And then anything anybody wanted to do would nicely fit into one of those 3, pretty much. So it's a coaching thing as well, because, well, that's just how it is, at least in our organization.
Yeah, it would be a coaching thing to try and break that down and go, what can my team contribute to that, right? Which levers are there? And you start breaking down the levers for reducing customer support or for increasing retention. And if you start almost like doing a MECE tree and you go, these are the 2 factors that influence, and those are the 2 factors that influence that, you should get to a point where you figure out, okay, my team can practically only move these 2 or 3 things
Mhm.
with the scope that we have in our mandate and our tools. And then from that, the team would derive their own goal that is measurable, that's going to contribute to that top one. Because that's also very key, I think, when you put these goals down. It needs to be, if it's a goal on a team level, it needs to be something that's in the team's control, so that they can motivate and like move towards it and not feel like it's something that's so far removed that, yeah, it's something they need to be able to drive towards. Sorry, Graham, I looked
Thank
down
you.
and
Yeah, no, just very, very briefly, because there's a couple of things with this. Is, I mean, firstly, this is what we talked about here is basically cascaded OKRs. I mean, it don't have to be OKRs, but it's cascaded goals, cascaded OKRs. You know, what we are talking about here, those 3 goals at the very, very highest level, you know, like, you know, improve retention. Great. And Chris, you've kind of said that in the thing as well. To go with that, for that to be an actual goal, you need to have something you're going to measure yourself against. So how much do you want to increase retention or decrease, you know, churn, etc., etc. And then absolutely, as Shabnam, you just said, you know, then you go, well, what piece of the pie can product hit with that? What piece of the pie can sales and marketing hit with that? You're absolutely right. As you're cascading those goals down, you kind of go, well, how do I interpret this, and what's my, you know, piece of that going to be? But there is that intermediary layer between the scenario that we've got, which is just those very high level goals, and but what level of that, you know, what's the metric the company is trying to hit, and that's the kind of almost the next layer down before anything else happens. And if the business is not doing that, that's a business education piece. That's not product to say you need to do this. That's a whole business problem.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. We still have one question, if you can answer that in 1 minute. This is, I think it's for Shabnam. I'm intrigued by 1 week planning. So for reference, we take 4 weeks for planning. How does it work for 1 week? Do they plan for a month, quarter, or 6 months?
yeah, we have a new VP of product, and she's given us a challenge that we should get this down to like 2 days next quarter. So I've gone challenge accepted. Let's see. We do a week planning for a quarter, right? And we are feeling like it's still too long. We want to tighten it up a little bit, but there is some pre-planning that happens. So the product leadership sits together and gets some direction, figures out what our pillars are, what we want to do, and then we do very, very quick chats with the leads of every team or tribe, depending, to give them some idea of the direction so they can start thinking about it. So the week before planning, product managers and product leads are thinking about planning already. No one else is involved, right? Then we do 1 week of structured planning, where we block of time, we stop engineering, we stop all work, we get all cross-functional teams together. Or product management, design, engineering, product marketing, some product ops, data, a little bit of support people. We set up the week, we have enough structure, and that week is meant to be the bulk of the planning. We kick off on a Monday morning, we reiterate the message that most people have met. We do 24 hours of like rapid planning, and we expect the teams to do their first and then we spend the next couple of days really focus on cross-functional collaboration and connection. This is because this has been a big issue for us. We found that the teams work in silos, so we've designed our sessions to force people to sit together. So the teams are playing back with each other. I'm orchestrating in the background. Teams are meeting. We do all of that. On a Friday, we have a big playback where everyone gets a good high-level view of everything. Directionally, we make sure everything is fine. One important thing is in that week when the teams are planning, product leadership is very available. And this is how we're managing to keep that week tight, because there's nothing worse than spending a week or 2 planning and then you come back and you hear that you were completely off, right? So you should be checking in with leaders and stakeholders every day, every 2 days to redirect when you need to. When you get to that Friday, you're mostly there. That's our planning week. The week thereafter, we will then meet with every team to refine in detail and get that thing super locked in. So planning is a little bit more than a week because we're still tightening and refining the weeks after. But that 1 week works really, really, really hard. It's messy. You're talking to a lot of people all the time, iterating a lot. But that's kind of how we've squashed it in by just having everyone, all hands on deck, super available, lots of chats.
Okay. Thank you. And I think we are on time. Thank you guys for joining us for this panel, and special thank you for our panelists, our speakers. You are helping us growing a lovely community. So we'd love to keep the conversation going in our Slack. So feel free to share your takeaways, planning tips, and questions. And if you're interested in moderating or speaking at the future session, let us know. Also, make sure that you connect with our panelists on LinkedIn. Leah is dropping those links for you in the chat. And lastly, but not least, I wanted to invite you all to the annual virtual summit powered by our sponsor Dragonboat. It will be on September 25th. So check out, please scan this QR code or check out dragonboat.io/accelerate2025 and see the agenda. So thank you all, and I'm sorry to wrap up this fast, and thank you all, and I will see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.